You're listening to Up An Octave, a podcast by Sonivia, the podcasting agency that believes that women and non-binary people deserve to take up space in the podcasting industry because our thoughts, voices, and stories matter. Here you'll learn how to make dope podcasts that inspire, educate, convert, and most importantly, make your voice shine. I'm your host, Rue Spence, and I'm here to take podcasting up an octave. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Up An Octave. I am so jazzed today to be passing the mic to Tanya Ambrose from the Tea with Tanya Transforming Every Aspect podcast. Tanya is about to celebrate her 100th episode, and in our conversation, we chatted about her starting out as an Instagram Live or IGTV girly to now becoming a top 5% ranked podcast, and all of the hurdles in between, from getting comfortable with her accent and feeling like that is her superpower, to technology, to even having a ring light fall on her while she was recording, to all of the things that have made her podcasting journey exciting, exhilarating, messy, and evolutionary. So this is a good one, but before we get into it, I just want to remind you that if you are hearing this the week that it comes out, you still have time to get into Podcast Paradise, my 4-day free bootcamp to help you level your podcast up and start staying booked but not busy as a result of your podcast working for you. Follow the link in the show notes to get involved with that. And now let's start sipping some tea with Tanya. Tanya, welcome to Up An Octave. I am so thrilled to have you here.
My Rue. I am so happy to be here. You have no idea. I mean, you should have an idea, but I am happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
It has been a long time coming.
Yes.
You are the host of the newly rebranded Tea with Tanya Transforming Every Aspect podcast. And you've been in the game for a minute and a half.
Yes, a minute and a half. It seems like it's been years, but it's not that long, but long enough, long enough.
As we're recording this, you are getting ready for your 100th episode. How does that feel?
It's so surreal. I can't believe that I literally would have been recording 100 episodes. I feel like it's just 10. Like, time just really flew by so quickly, Rue. I can't believe it. But it's a feat that I'm grateful for. I'm appreciative. I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been consistent. So that's the big thing, being consistent, because consistency is what got me here. So I'm happy. I'm excited. I can't wait for what's to come on Tea with Tanya, transforming every aspect.
Let's talk about kind of your origin story, because you actually started over on Instagram. You were doing Instagram Lives, or I guess IGTV. Was that what it was called back then? And then you eventually migrated over into actually doing a podcast. What was that like? How did you get started with the lives? How did you decide to branch over into actually podcasting? Spill all the tea. I know that's what you're good at.
Okay, yes. Let me spill the tea, and let me try to keep the tea a little bit sweet and short and not too much. But I got a first speaking engagement from a group of high school students out of Florida. They reached out to me on Instagram because I was in my public health bag very, very deep back then. I still am, but I was the champion. I was the OG public health girl on Instagram, and they reached out to me to do a speaking engagement. And I'm like, me, Tanya Ambrose, why you want me to be on your podcast? I mean, why you want me to be even presenting you anything at all? My first time presenting anything in the public speaking level as far as outside of school. Because let me tell you, when you're going to school in undergrad, I'm sure you can relate. Miss Social, once upon a time social worker, you had to do these group projects and you had to present to the class. That's all I knew. That is all I knew. And when they asked me to do that, I had to do my own research. I had to create my own PowerPoint. I had to make sure that it was engaging for high school students. And it was after that when I was on camera, put on a little bit of my makeup so I can look like, a decent person who know what I'm about. And I did that presentation to these high school students, and the feedback that I got from them, the questions that they asked, and that just gave me the drive or the motivation to want to do Instagram Live. And mind you, this was during the height of the pandemic. So, we were all doing things during the pandemic. Some of us became plant moms. We started doing arts and craft. I decided I was going to do the Instagram IGTV lives every Monday at one point in time. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't think I have, being in the front of the camera face. I got nervous, I have an accent, I speak fast. So I'm sorry for your listeners who, if you don't understand me, just listen a little bit faster with me, okay? Because sometimes I can speak fast. And I did it on one night, Rue, and that was it. That one night, people came into the live. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I had my outline and I had different guests because we were supposed to be all about public health and how public health can relate to our everyday life. And from since then, Rue, I went live every Monday because at one point I was going every other Monday, and the people who were tuning, they told me, you have to go every week because we love these conversations. And that's what I did, Rue. And I'm like, okay, this can be a podcast. Because again, like I said, YouTube, I think, was kicking off. I mean, YouTube has been around for centuries now, but it's been kicking off. And I'm like, you know what? I don't have the energy or the time to even record an episode or anything on YouTube, to edit a video. Like, that's just too much work for me. So I say podcasting was the easier route for me at the time. I'm like, you know what? I don't have to show my face. I can be my animated self behind the mic. So I thought. But that's basically how I got my start into the podcasting world, from that Instagram live, from the encouragement from those who were tuning after they would see the IGTV after. I just want to say, we've come a long way, because IGTV to now Reels, it's just been, that transition on Instagram has been pretty wild. But yeah, that's how I got into the podcasting world. And I've been on and off when I first started, because again, I had no idea what I was doing. All I knew is I need to get a mic. I started recording my podcast episodes on my phone, on that voice memo app on the iPhone. No, it might have been my Android at the time. See, that's how long I've come. It was my Samsung Galaxy, which I still love to this day. I started recording my episode on a phone, recorded the intro, had no idea what I was doing, had my baby sister, who was in her YouTube era, edit everything for me. And here I am now, almost 100 episodes in. And I will say, there've been time, and if I'm talking too much, shut me up, because I can talk. I can talk. But it's that being consistent was challenging for me, because I was still in undergrad. I was working 2 jobs and I was building my nonprofit. I was just doing so much. But so I've been consistent for, let's say, a couple of months, and I've been on and off. I'm like, I don't know. Then I had people who would DM me, oh, I missed your podcast. I haven't seen you on this week. I'm like, okay, if I can just reach one person, I'm doing my job. So the transition from Instagram Live / IGTV to the podcasting world has been, I'm going to say, challenging, but it's getting better. And it's getting better, if you don't mind me saying that, it's getting better because of my fairy pod mother. Her name is Rue. I think she has a podcast that's called Up An Octave. Like the growth of Tea with Tanya, the evolution that's been happening here in the tea tasting room has been as a result of you. And I know you're not talking to me about that, but it has really been a result of you. One random day in a Facebook group I forgot what it was, in Colombia, something doulas, a doula group. If you're listening, people, a doula group, I met Rue. We had that first meeting, and I was like, her energy, that's it. I don't need to talk to anybody else. She's just going to be the person to help me elevate Tea with Tanya. And she has absolutely done that. She would be coy and be like, I'm just here doing my thing. No, she's not going to gas her up, because the reason why I've been able to grow as a podcaster in so many different ways, from researching topics to writing an outline to even naming a podcast episode, has been a result of having Rue a part of my team. It was a one-man show for a period of time. Now it's me and her, and she can't get rid of me. So I'm going to shut up now.
Well, first off, it's way too early in this interview for you to be getting me in my feels. So thank you for all of that. That is going to boost me through the rest of my week. Oh my gosh, so much that I want to unpack with that. Step 1, let's talk about the production side of things. How did producing, just hopping on an IG Live, how is that different for people who are considering, do they want to start a live? Do they want to start an actual podcast? Do they want to do a YouTube? What was your experience with the difference between just hopping on your phone versus producing a podcast?
I think for me, I will say I was just using one phone. I had no mic. I had no AirPods at the time. It was just me and my phone on a tripod when I was doing the Instagram Live. All I was doing was making sure my head was in the center of that camera or that screen when I was doing my Instagram Live. I wasn't thinking about the sound of how it's going to sound when it was saved to my Instagram feed. I wasn't thinking about anything lighting related, like all these things. I wasn't doing that. The only thing that I think I carried over from my Instagram Live experience was the questions ahead of time when it came to the guests. I was doing the research. What kind of question would I write, or would I ask him? How would it flow with the Instagram Live? But other than that, let me tell you, the producing part, let me tell you, I got to think about the audio. I got to think about what room I'm recording an episode in, so I can make sure it's not echoing. I have to make sure, if I decided I want to have some sort of video clip at the time before I found you, I got to have this lighting. So I was buying a ring light, and I was just doing it all, again, just from seeing what others were doing. But the work behind of it, no, like even the editing aspect of it, I'm going to be honest. I have a podcast and sometimes I'm like, oh, I can't stand my voice, you know? Oh, I should have sounded a little bit happier or much more cheery on a particular episode. But as far as the editing, I hated the editing and audio. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just when I think I'm cutting out me sucking my teeth or when I think I'm cutting out the long pauses, it was just a mess. Again, a learning curve because with the Instagram live, I'm just recording a video and it's going to automatically save to my feed. No matter what, all I had to do was just click start live, end live, and then moved on, you know? So the only thing that I brought over from me was just doing the research as it relates to my guests or the questions I would ask. But then even with doing that on the Instagram, the people who I had on my Instagram live, some I knew or interacted with a bit, so I knew what they were going to bring. And I had them send me questions that they would be feeling comfortable asking. On a podcast now, I have to do my research for a guest. I kind of up and say, oh, I know you, I follow you. Can you be on my podcast and keep it moving? I have to know what they do as it relates with their platform. I have to ensure that the questions that I'm asking, they're comfortable with, but also I am bringing some sort of tea, pun intended, to the listeners as well. So I always go into a podcast recording thinking, what would I want to hear if I'm listening to a podcast? And it's a whole production. I cannot write a podcast script the day of an episode because I always tell myself it wouldn't translate the way I want to. And there have been times when I've written questions or written the script for a podcast or just an outline the day of to record the day of. And to be quite honest with you, when I do that, the episode doesn't perform the way I anticipate it to perform or I think it should perform because, again, I know my energy is not 100% in, if I can be that transparent. So I try to, plan ahead of time because when I'm able to brainstorm, do my research on a particular topic, tied into my everyday life, thinking about what my friends would want to hear or my listeners or my T-testers, as I call them, would like to hear. So it's the whole production, the audio, making sure that I'm in a particular room. I specifically came into a room today because let me tell you, when you listen to Rue's podcast, the audio is top tier. It is top tier. So I had to put on my best. I had to get into a room that I know was going to give her the best audio. But producing a podcast episode or even a show it's no easy feat. And yeah, it's a lot of work. I got to research. I can't just get up and record. I have to research. I have to practice to make sure I'm enunciating my words because I have an accent and I speak fast. And when I get excited, I speak faster than Usain Bolt can run. So I have to make sure that I'm practicing. I have to make sure I'm practicing before I get behind a mic. Sometimes, though, the downside to that is that how I practice an episode sometimes, depending on how often I do, it doesn't always translate well if I don't rehearse as consistently as I should before recording. So it's a lot that goes into that.
It's funny because going live is such a mental roadblock for me. I recently did a 30-day challenge of it.
Yeah.
I got a kid. I got so many moving parts. With a podcast, you don't know how much I cut out. There is so much popping up behind the scenes that you don't hear because I get to edit it out.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're doing an IG live, it's real time, baby.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yeah.
I've had a ring light falling on me while I'm on the live. Listen, I've had the power go out on me because of a storm. I've had the phone drop out of the tripod. It's been a mess, but I think that's what humbled me, or it was just like a fun time. And that's the element I wanted to bring to the podcast because we were having a time on that Instagram live, being able to see the live comments. I think that's what gets me going. And it's the only thing, one of the things that I miss when it comes to a podcast, that live interaction. So as we are discussing a particular topic, I can see the questions or see the feedback from my guests in the live. So that's the one thing that I miss when it comes to having the Instagram live versus a podcast, because I'm talking to myself most times. I'm talking to the mirror, whatever it is, versus actually directly speaking to people, even though they're not physically in the room. Technically they are, and I'm seeing that feedback. So I used to thrive from that feedback. Yay me, because one thing about me, I can be shy, but I used to thrive because it made me feel comfortable, or knowing that they're actually paying attention, or it's something that I'm giving them something that's worth listening to, So that's the only thing that I miss. Or I can, when it comes to comparing the podcast and an Instagram live, that transition is having that live interaction really does help.
No, it definitely does. I actually just at the time that we're putting this out, put out an episode on audience interaction because there are so many different ways to get that feedback. And it is so helpful and integral to the success of a show to make sure that you have your finger on the pulse and that you're dialed into what your audience is actually looking for. And so it's so nice when you are doing a live to be able to just see the questions coming in, the comments coming in, see what people are resonating with and hearting. And yeah, and it is hard when you're just on a podcast, because really, if it is a solo podcast, like you said, it's just you and your microphone. Like there is
Yeah.
no instant feedback. There's no nonverbal body language of people like, or like feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
You're just hoping that a week or two from now when it comes out that it's going to hit.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you've brought it up a couple times. I'm wondering, can we talk about your accent?
Oh, Lord, yes. Whatever you want, you got it. Tell me, honey.
So you immigrated from Antigua. You're a proud island girly.
Yes.
And I know that it has been, even just in this conversation, you've talked about it as kind of being a hurdle that, especially for your American listeners, you have felt self-conscious about having an accent and people that would consider that difficult to understand. So what feedback or inspiration or tips would you have for somebody who does have an accent that they think would make it harder for them to be a successful podcaster?
Whenever I'm asked that question, doesn't even matter what platform or in what situation, it takes me back to when I was in nursing school. How many years ago, I can't even remember. But I remember being in nursing school and my first semester of doing clinicals, I was at the end of that clinical session, the feedback my professor gave me was like, you know what, Tanya's a little bit shy. She depends on her classmate too much, or she's leaning on them to talk whenever it comes to having a conversation or doing the assessment on a patient. And me, if you know me, I'm an overachiever. Like I need to get all A's. I need to succeed at almost everything. I mean, of course, that doesn't happen all the time. But I remember her telling me, Tanya, you have an accent. You have a beautiful accent. You need to lean into that. I was like, I say, I speak fast. Even my own parents sometimes can't even understand me because I speak that fast. I have an accent that I'm trying to code switch because, you know, you got to put on that yanking voice when you're speaking to other people. And she said to me that my accent could be my superpower. It could be something that I can build rapport with the patients at the time. I can start a conversation. And she said, you know what, you just never know because that means, you know, your cultural, what was the term that she used? Something to do with my culture. She's like, you know, your culture can lead you in a way that you can speak to other people who are from different dynamics. And I think when she told me that, from ever since, I would say I gained the confidence, but sometimes I'm always conscious of the fact that, you know what, okay, it's not so much about the accent now, it's the speed of what I'm saying. And there's sometimes stuttering when I'm speaking really, really fast. So I would say if you have an accent, it doesn't matter where in the world you are, lean into it. Because I often say that, you know what, I am speaking English. Sometimes it may be broken down English. If you don't understand me, you can simply ask me to repeat. If you're from someone where English is your second language, again, just stand in your power, stand in your truth. Because I say that because if we cannot show up as our authentic self, then why are we here? Why are we in the room? You know? And even though sometimes I joke about, oh, I have an accent, I speak fast. That's just my way of getting it out of the way. Because I'm like, you know, I'm no longer going to be putting on that Yankee. Apparently I have a southern accent now, according to one of my friends from back in Antigua. She said, you have a Yankee. I said, me? She said, you got a mixture of New York and South Carolina. I said, oh, you just said that because I live here. But then one day I actually heard it, to be honest. And I said to myself, I said, you know what, I'm just going to be me. I said, if somebody can understand what I'm saying, I have no problem repeating because, again, my accent is who I am. And I'm very Antiguan through and through, even though I've been living in this country for almost 15 years. You know, I go home every year. I'm still connected back home. So why would I want to give up something that makes me unique, you know? And it just makes me, it puts me in a position that I can adjust and adapt to anyone, even if it doesn't matter what part of the world you are, because I know I can relate now to you as an immigrant, as someone with an accent. I can now relate with you because you know what you're experiencing, what I may have experienced, or sometimes even still do experience. So it's just standing in your truth, standing in your authenticity, because at the end of the day, no one can be you. You kind of, why do we need to code switch to fit in? That means we're not showing up as our unique self. So I just think, you know, you want to stay true to who you are. Of course, you know, we know certain settings, depending on where you are in the world, certain settings that you're in, you have to, you know, switch just slightly. You know, you got to make sure you're showing up in a way that you're showing up as yourself, but you're still uniquely you. So just stand in your accent. It's beautiful. I hear it all the time. You have a beautiful accent. I'm like, oh, me? You're making me blush. So I know, like hearing that. So I'm just like, you know what? This is me. This is who I am. Take me as it is. Or if not, then I don't know what to do with you because I'm taking you as you are. So just accept this beautiful accent like I've been taught. Use it as your superpower. Use it as a way for you to build rapport with people and create a different relationship with them as well as a result of your accent. Believe it or not, that is actually a thing. I have built connection just because, you know what, Tanya's an Antigua and she has a beautiful accent. And then, of course, everything else from personality-wise. So be yourself. Talk how you want to talk. You know, I'm talking true, and I know some in the back of my mind, I'm code switching, but I'm sure I can hear it coming out a little bit. The Antiguan is coming out a little bit thicker in just that last sentence. So, you know, it's just always getting in my head. You know what? This is who I am. I'm going to speak to you. You're going to hear me. You're going to understand me and keep it moving, you know?
I am so proud of you because this has been something that we have talked about for a while. I mean, when I first started editing for you, you're like, I hope you can understand me. And I was like, girl, I have Caribbean family. Like my husband's entire family is Caribbean. I was like, I got this.
Yes.
And you were like, oh, okay. And then like slowly we started talking about that because you're like, I just want people to understand me. And I'm like, if they don't understand you, they're not for you.
Right.
Like the people who are going to ride for you are going to love it. And I can always hear now, like when you start to get really fired up and the like patois starts to hit, I'm like, oh, this one's going to have some tea on it. There's going to be some hella tea on this one. Because I can hear that authenticity come out, and those are the ones that hit the hardest. I'm like, oh, when that Antigua starts to come out, I'm like, this is going to be the episode that gets her new 5-star reviews. This is going to be the episode that gets people in her DMs. This is going to be the episode because that's like who you are. And obviously, like you said, to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself employed, whatever it is, obviously there are times where you do feel the need to code switch, but like that should not be on the thing that you are making for yourself, which is your podcast. So I love that so much. And I think that is incredibly affirming for people who are in a position where you were not too long ago with, not being sure that it's time to step into their power and own that as their superpower.
And I'll say this before we go to the next question. Again, your voice is going to reach its intended audience. It doesn't matter if you have a podcast, a YouTube page, if you're doing a speaking engagement, your unique voice, accent and all, is going to meet and reach its intended audience. And I think that's what keeps me going. Sometimes I do get in my head, but that's what keeps me going for the most part. As you said, who's supposed to hear me? They're going to hear me. So you got to approach your podcast, your YouTube, whatever it is, that way. Your voice is going to reach its intended audience.
No, that's so true. So valuable. So you do the most. You are a full-time day job employee. You are in grad school. You have founded a nonprofit, and you have a podcast, and. So because it takes so much effort to produce a podcast, how do you do it all?
That's a very good answer. And the question and the answer for that changes ever so often. I still don't know how I do it all. I don't have enough hours in my days, I'm going to be honest. But I will say, being able to quote unquote do it all, again, if it wasn't for you, Rue, and I'm not just trying to gas you up, if you're listening, you're looking for an editor or somebody to be on your team, Rue really is the girl. Because when I think back to the entire 2023, I've put out a podcast episode every Tuesday in 2023, Rue, and you know that. And I'm thinking back, like I was just on the show the other day. I'm like, girl, you're about to approach 100 episode. First of all, I remember when I was at episode 2, 3 thinking, oh my goodness, it's just too much to edit, X, Y, Z. But one of the reasons or one of the ways in which I'm able to quote unquote do it all is to delegate. So of course I have Rue on my team. All I have to do is we're meeting when we do meet, and we're planning the season, we're planning the episode. So I already have my tasks. So at this point, Rue is letting me know, girl, I need this episode by XYZ day. Sometimes I'll be honest, I don't always get it to her on time, but she so I'm not telling you to do that. Don't be me. But, having a plan, being able to have the podcast seasons planned out ahead of time, so that way I can go ahead and do my research. Because like I mentioned earlier, having a podcast, you just getting the mic and starting to talk. You have to have a flow, a theme of your episode and these different things. So being able to have that ahead of time, scheduling the times when I'm going to record an episode, because again, I'm in grad school and that's a lot. I work full time. I'm a doula. I'm a nonprofit founder. That's, I have a nonprofit that's growing at a faster rate that I didn't even imagine or anticipate. So being able to have you on my team as a podcast editor, and then as a nonprofit founder, being able to delegate. And I say that word delegate very lightly because my nonprofit is my baby. And, you have a baby, you know that she's your baby. You just want to love on her. Mm-hmm. You want to do it, or you want to make sure that they're taken care of. So it's always sometimes hard for me to delegate. But in this current season, I'm realizing I have to rely on my team within my nonprofit organization. So I'm now a tad bit more relaxed because we're knee deep into planning our Women and Girls Health Expo, but being able to create subcommittees for my nonprofit so I don't have to oversee everything all at once. So that's also another thing. So delegation and building a team where you share that core value. As far as the schoolwork now, let me tell you guys, I do not know. Especially this semester, I'm about to be getting all A's. I can't tell you how it's happening, but I'm telling you it's happening because my time management this semester has not been the best. But it comes down again to time management. And I've had to give myself grace by telling myself, in the mornings, I'm a morning person. I'm an early riser because I'm going to be in the bed pretty early as well. But I tend to at least plan out the first 2 hours of my morning. When I'm getting up, I have my time for my devotion, for my workout, for my meditation, and then I'm spending at least 30 minutes either planning out the day or just getting some tasks that I know I need to get done that are probably the least priority on my list. But again, it comes down to having a team. And I know when I'm saying having a team, now you probably think, oh girl, I ain't got no money to have this team or whatever the case may be. But it doesn't even have to be that. Just have that structure that I'm working on having, Rue. That structure when it comes to, okay, I can dedicate. Because for me right now, and not necessarily about the podcast, but for my nonprofit, for me, I dedicate at least 20 hours a week for my nonprofit. I know that sounds a lot, but yes, I am the founder. We are still very small and we have a lot going on. So I have to oversee a lot. So I dedicate, like I work my regular 9 to 5. I'm going to the gym to work out because now that's also a way in which is helping me to thrive mentally and physically by working out. So that's part of my routine. So I'm going to the gym, I'm working out, then I'm spending at least 2 to 3 hours each night working on whether it's a grant for my nonprofit, whatever it is, I am carving out those times. So I'm not telling you to go get an entire team where you necessarily have to spend money that we don't have, or if you don't have that access to that resource, but proper time management. And I know it's very cliche to like, oh, proper time management. And how do I do that? Especially if I have a family, because I like to talk to my people who are parents, even though I'm not. But again, you're having to work, take care of a child. Like being a mom or a dad is just literally a full-time job. I don't know how you do it, Rue, but
me either, girlfriend. Me either.
it's a full-time job. So it comes down to just proper time management, but also learning to give yourself grace. Because let me tell you, I've been extending grace to myself a lot this year, and we're only 4 months in. Giving yourself grace because you can't get to everything. Sometimes I want to record 2 and 3 podcasts in one night. My voice may not be working with me, or my mental capacity. I probably would have reached my mental capacity where I can't even record an episode. Because like I mentioned before, if I'm not thoroughly planning an episode, it's not going to do well or the way how I want it to do, because that energy that I'm bringing to that podcast episode is not going to be the energy that I should be putting out, So again, giving yourself grace, because that's very big. Rest when the time comes. Learn to delegate if you have access to do that. And just, again, I'm going to say it again, extend yourself grace. I can't say it any clearer than that. Just give yourself grace. Map out your time. What I do sometimes, even though I have a planner, I get a Post-it and I'll list 3 to 5 tasks that I must complete in a given day. So I start from the most priority to the least priority. And sometimes I'll knock the least priority out because you know what, that's not going to take much energy or effort from me. And then I tackle the ones that are at the top of my priority list. So again, you can just use that little Post-it. They have different colors now. You can use that and just write out 3 to 5 tasks, because there's no way you can get everything done in one day. I saw a quote that said, oh, you have the same 24 hours as Beyonce. I'm like, no, I don't, because Beyonce has a chef. She has a babysitter. She has a supportive husband. She has, all these team. Like one time, like, you know what? That's why I love her, because of her work ethic, which she does have. But I'm like, girl, you got a nanny. You got everything. I'm here with the same hours as you, but it's a one-man show here, But again, it just comes down to carving out that time, how you see fit throughout the week. Because for me, like I said, I spend 20 hours on my nonprofit. Sometimes it doesn't even be 20 hours. It's just one day out of a week, because that's all the capacity I have. So again, delegate if you can, and if not, you just manage your time. That's best for you. Not what everybody's saying on Instagram. Oh, you need to be spending 5 hours on your side hustle. If you don't have 5 hours in your day, you do 30 minutes to an hour. That should be enough.
Mm-hmm. With that, how did you know that it was time for you to outsource for the podcast? I know you mentioned that you hated editing and you were kind of figuring out what was next for the podcast when we very first started working together. How did you know, okay, it's time for me to get some help in here?
I think when I was at a crossroad, I didn't necessarily like the direction that my podcast was heading. What I mean by that, it wasn't feeling authentic to myself. I was just following the crowd because everybody was talking about these kind of topics, and that was the in thing. So I felt like I was running out of ideas at one point in time. Like, how can I be consistent with something that I'm not feeling attached to? Does that make any sense? Like, how can I put out 100% of my effort into this when I'm not feeling attached to the things that I'm talking about? When I started getting lazy, when I was missing an episode, and before you know, it was 2 and 3 episodes where I didn't even put an episode out. And I just lacked direction. Because when I first started my podcast, again, we spoke about the transition from Instagram to my podcast. Yes, I did my research. Yes, I signed up for so many different free classes or courses or guides. But then I didn't have any direction when I first recorded my first or even second episode. I was just recording something about self-help one day and talking about maybe vaginas the next day. I was just going with the flow because, again, I was looking at the other people who were podcasting before me, and I was trying to follow them. So if you don't mind, well, let me just explain it a little bit. Like I had a favorite podcast I was listening to, and oh yeah, I can be her. And I'm very embarrassed to say this, but I literally stole her aesthetic in the sense of, okay, let me speak this way. That comes back again to me not leaning into my accent. Let me speak this way. Let me talk about this particular topic, but just change the name of the episode title or see what she said and take notes. Again, nothing is wrong with that because I'm all for we can be inspired, but we don't have to jack somebody else's style. Does that make sense? And I found myself doing that. So, okay, I'm either uninspired or I'm just doing this because, I already started and because I'm an overachiever, I'm just going to follow through. I was like, no, I have big goals and big dreams for a Tea with Tanya. And I'm like, if I'm going to continue this, I need someone who I can either bounce ideas off of, or I can just tell them, this is what I want. And then they can tell me, you know what, Tanya, this is the way I think you should do it. Even though it's collaborative, but I just want to be able to can brain dump to an individual. And you tell me, okay, I have this expertise. Let me do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know how I was going to factor it into my budget, I'm going to be honest. But I was like, I need help. Because if I'm to get speaking engagement, if I'm supposed to set myself up as an expert in certain areas, I need to get serious with my podcast. And I was not going to go to YouTube. And this is no slight to YouTube, but I wasn't going to go record an episode with my video, with my face. I think that, and it goes back to that quote I mentioned earlier, your voice is going to find its intended audience. And then realizing that I had people who were coming to listen. Like I have my faithfuls with T.E.A. Tanya. They were asking me, oh, isn't this episode? You should talk about this. Like I get so many requests, but I'm like, you know what? I need help. And I was like, it was time. And I took a leap of faith and saw a comment on a Facebook post, and there was Ruth Spence. And when I say my life has been significantly better, it has. I'm not perfect, and we will tell you that. But it gives me something to look forward to, because now I have to show up as my authentic self and I have to be consistent. And I'm now seeing the rewards of being consistent by way of having or outsourcing the help that I have right now. Because let me tell you, if I did not have Rue in 2023, Tea with Tanya would have either been non-existent or there would have been an episode once every quarter. Because that's, again, I have my baby, my nonprofit Scrub Life Cares. I'm a doula. I work full-time. I'm in school. I'm just everything, doing it all, trying to find a balance. But again, when I realized I had bigger goals for Tea with Tanya, I knew I needed help. I didn't know what the help was going to look like, but like I said, Rue is the fairy pod mother, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on her podcast. She has a system. Again, I don't know how she does it as a wife, a mom, and an entrepreneur, but it gets done. And because of that, now my life is a bit easier. It's causing me to show up. It's holding me accountable, again, as a result of having that help. But I knew I needed that help because I was just not inspired. I was just jacking someone else's style or thinking that that's the alignment that I'm in with this particular podcast or podcast. And that was not me. I had to stay true to myself. And, it's a lot of work when you're not being yourself. Let me just say that. When you're not being yourself, it's a lot of work to maintain. And I don't have the energy or the time, literally, to be somebody else. So that's when I'm like, you know what? I need help. We got to elevate this podcast. And here we are.
And now you're being rewarded for it too, Miss Top 5%. Tea with Tanya is a top 5% ranking podcast.
I love it. I still pinch myself every time I think about it. I was like, oh my goodness. And that as a result of being consistent. Consistency really is key.
I love hearing what that experience was like on your end, because I don't know that I've actually ever told you this. So we're going to get a little tea here in, can I call it the tea tasting room since you're here?
You should see my face, but yes, give me that tea.
No. So it's like a core memory for me. I was actually sitting in the hospital when we first connected. I was scrolling Facebook trying to keep myself busy because I was pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
I got sent over because they wanted to, my blood pressure was high because I was the most anxious in my life, my whole pregnancy. They were like, we're going to go evaluate you. And I was like, I'm just having a panic attack. It's fine. And they're like, no, girl, we need to make sure you're not dying. And I was like, okay. So I'm over there I hope my baby's okay. Hope I'm okay. I'm hungry, blah, blah, blah. And I'm scrolling Facebook and I saw your post. And that's when I reached out to you. Was literally, I remember I had my little behind sitting in the hospital bed, my big old pregnant belly strapped up to a monitor. And I'm like, who's this Tanya lady? She sounds cool.
Let me tell you, I did not know this, and I would not have known because I didn't hear anything. Like when I said the most professional, I was like, okay, I got to bring my A game because this woman, she sound cool and she sound fun, but she is so professional. You were in the bed at a hospital with a baby monitor strapped to you, getting ready to give birth to your beautiful baby. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, it was just like a regular appointment. They're like, we want you to get checked out. And I was on Facebook. And then it actually took us a little while to end up connecting. So, because I know,
yes.
and now I know that's because you were not sure about how you wanted to follow through. So I'm so excited that you got brave and that you took the leap, because it is definitely paying back leaps and bounds with the success that Tea with Tanya has had in this last year. And now with the rebrand, even more good is coming.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting ready to wrap up, but I do just want to touch on the rebrand a little bit, since we are talking about all of your success. You have always been the Tea with Tanya podcast, but now we have uncovered that T is actually an acronym for transforming every aspect. Can we talk about how the show has evolved, continues to evolve, and how you hold space for that evolution within your brand?
Yes, I think one of the reoccurring theme with Tea with Tanya is always about elevating. Of course, we talk about living your best life, but making sure that you're on your A game. You're on this health and wellness journey. And when I say health and wellness, it's not just about what you eat. It's just every aspect, everything that makes up our human body at this point in time. And we're having to tend to it. It's mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever it is. And I think looking back from where I once started, I wanted to educate the entire world. Maybe one day, but I wanted to educate the entire world. I didn't have a particular audience. I had no idea what I was doing. And as I continue to have many different life experiences, life challenges, whatever it is, I'm realizing, you know what, I'm ever evolving and I'm always transforming, because the Tanya of 2023 is definitely not the Tanya of 2024. The Tanya of 2022 is not the same. Like, I'm always transforming. I'm always evolving. And as humans, we're always evolving. Like, the person that we were yesterday is not even who we are today, because we're waking up with a different mindset. And I think having that dream about, you know what, you need to have some sort of acronym for T. Yeah, you're talking about T. Yeah, you actually do love tea. And I'm sharing you my tea of the week or my tea of the month. But what does T really stand for? And it just came down to, I had a dream. Because one thing about me, when I have a dream, it's going to have to come true some way, shape, or form, especially when it's very, very vivid. And I just remember seeing transform in every aspect. And I was like, okay, let me go ahead and try to find some other words, some other acronyms, and some other meanings to go along with T, because I'm not sure people are going to like the transform in every aspect. But again, it was just so authentic to me and the feel of the podcast. And again, where we once started to where we are now, we have evolved. We're having more, subscribers, more listeners. We're having people who are actually leaving feedback, even though I need you guys to go actually rate and review the show, not coming to my DM. I mean, coming to the DMs, but let's go give me that rating, because there are many DMs that I get. If I get that to my review, the help it will give me. But it's just, again, it makes me feel, I'm feeling I belong now. And that may sound crazy because I've been podcasting for a little bit. I'm actually about to be episode 100, but it makes me now feel that connected to the Tea with Tanya podcast brand. It makes me feel authentic to who I am, because it gives me more of a wiggle room to show up as my authentic self. Whereas even though I was going within the last year and a half, I was still holding some things back. And now I have a burning desire to just be my true self. Sometimes the truth is going to come out. It may be a little bit raw, and it's going to sound even more raw with my accent, when that patois, that dialect comes out. But I just feel more connected and excited about the Tea with Tanya podcast, and to see where it can go from where I came from, no direction, to being consistent, to having an episode every year in 2023. That's a feat that I don't even often give myself credit for. But just to have that actual genuine connection to my podcast. I'm not just podcasting because it's just I want to run my mouth, or it's just a means to an end or whatever. I'm really podcasting because I do believe that my voice is going to reach its intended audience. And yeah, that's how I feel. I guess I can just sometimes say I feel connected to my podcast. I have that bond. Like when you have a baby, and that baby, you first see your baby and they're putting the baby on your chest or whatever it is, and you just automatically, I guess your mom instinct kicks in. Not for everyone, but right away. But that's how I'm like, okay, I've been carrying this baby for obviously longer than 9 months now, but it's like a rebirth of Tea with Tanya, and I now feel connected and equipped to actually have a voice in this podcasting world. Now I'm about to be sad because I'm like, oh my goodness, you've come a long way. But that's just how I feel as it relates to the rebrand, as far as, feeling connected, genuinely connected, excited to actually record an episode, not just doing it because, I have to show up for Rue because she's editing the podcast, but actually excited to do the research and reaching out to these different people, stepping up my pitch game as a result of you again from your podcast. So I just feel connected. It's my baby and I'm ready to nurture it and raise it in a way that is going to be just a beautiful thing out here in this corner of the world.
I love that so much. I love watching you continue to step into your authenticity And I feel like the rebrand is just you continuing to level up and really own it and claim it and stand in that power. So, this has been amazing.
Yes.
I just love you. Thank you so much for coming on. Please plug yourself. I don't know if you want to, obviously you have that little podcast we were talking about, but Scrub Life Cares, whatever you want to plug, the floor is yours. Take over, talk about it.
Listen, I just want to say, before I go, I just want to say I do love you and appreciate you. I know I tell you all the time, but sometimes I don't think I do it enough because when she calls herself the fairy pod mother, for those of you listening, let me tell you, if you talk about elevating, if you're talking about getting your voice out, building that confidence, this is our rule. So when I think about T.E.A, I'm like, you know what, this is rules adopted, baby, because as a result of her, I'm now doing amazing and I'm getting that confidence. But yes, you can find me at T.E.A Tanya, transforming every aspect on all podcasting platforms, T.E.A Tanya podcast on Instagram, T.E.A Tanya on Facebook. And yes, I do have a nonprofit organization. We're all about women's reproductive health or health education. You can donate. Check our website out, www.scrublifecares.org. You can donate because we're often working towards refilling our menstrual pantry and hygiene pantry. So you can donate, go to Amazon, our Amazon wish list, and whatever you see fit. Just check us out because we are doing amazing work in the community and it's very important work. So I just want to thank you, Ruth, for this opportunity. And yes, I'm just happy that I finally made it here. Like you were on my list for 2024 before you even asked me. I was like, I don't want to ask because I'm like, I don't know if I'm crossing the line or not, but you know what? It's amazing to be here. And I just want to thank you again for all that you do for us. And when I say us, those of us listening who listen to you consistently, the many tips and tricks and the many notes. I always text you whenever I listen to an episode. I'm like, you know what? This was good. I cannot listen to an episode when I'm driving sometimes because I got to pick the phone up to put something in my note. I'm like, I can't be driving and texting. But so I wait till I'm in like a quiet space where I can have a book so I can take my notes because you are really out here doing amazing work. So I'm just going to give you your flowers, even though you've given me mine. But you are amazing and I love and appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for taking some time out of your crazy busy schedule. I guess you probably have to go write a paper or something. So yes. Thank you for being here and thank you for helping me take podcasting up an octave.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. I told you this one was going to be a good one. I always enjoy getting to talk to Tanya, and this conversation was no different. Next week, I will be back to talk about whether or not you need a co-host. Next week, I'll also be hanging out in podcast paradise, so make sure that you have taken the time to join that free bootcamp. You can head over to Instagram and follow me at Sonivia Studios. I share even more podcasting tips and tricks over there. While you're here, please make sure that you have followed or subscribed on whatever podcatcher you're listening to this episode on. And while you're there, if you can leave me a 5-star rating or a review, because just like your show, mine needs those to grow. Thank you so much for helping me take podcasting up an octave.